Assalamu alaikum, dear students. How are you? I hope you will all be fine and preparing for your just exams. You must be revising all the lectures we have had in the past few days. So today the topic I have selected is the difference of phrase, clause, and sentence. A very, very important topic because until and unless we know the difference of the phrase, clause, and sentence, we would not be able to identify the kinds of phrases, the kinds of clauses, or the kinds of sentences. So this topic is very important. This is the basic concept which you must have before we just move further to learn other concepts. So first of all, we have to see that what makes a sentence. Subject, verb, and object. Yes, these are the essential building blocks of a sentence, but sometimes we see that object is missing in the sentence, but subject and verb, they are the essential building blocks of a sentence. Without subject and verb, we cannot make a sentence. We cannot make a meaningful sentence. So, subject, verb, and object, they make a complete meaningful sentence. So what is a subject? Subject is the doer of the action. Verb is a word which expresses the action. And object is a word which receives the action of the subject. It means subject is the doer, verb is the action word, and object is the receiver of the action. This is the main thing which makes a sentence. Now we have to learn that in how many parts we can divide a sentence. We always divide a sentence in two parts, a subject and a predicate. Now we have to learn that what do we mean by a subject and predicate. Subject we have already discussed, that subject is the doer of the action. The subject is what the sentence is all about, while the predicate tells something about the subject. So, what is meant by predicate? Subject is the doer of the action, and the later part of the sentence after the subject tells us about the subject. So, the later part of the sentence, which tells us or which describes the subject, is called predicate. Let's learn the whole concept with the help of examples. Suppose we spilled popcorn on the floor. Now decide who or what spilled popcorn. We spilled popcorn on the floor. It means we is acting as a subject over here in the sentence. Now, can we find the predicate in each sentence below? My little brother broke his finger. My little brother is the subject. Broke his finger is the later part of the sentence which describes the subject. So this is called predicate. His uncle Bob asked for directions. His uncle Bob is the subject, and the later part of the sentence which starts from asked for directions is predicate as it describes the subject. Those soldiers carried guns. So those soldiers, that is the subject, carried guns. From carried guns, it is predicate as it gives us more information about the subject. Our babysitter arrived late. Our babysitter is the subject, and the later part of the sentence, right after the subject, arrived late, is the predicate. So I think your concept of the subject and the predicate is quite clear from here, because in your exam, either the predicate can be underlined and you have to identify, or the subject can be underlined and you have to identify which is the subject and which is the predicate. Then we come to the next concept, which is a clause, a very, very important concept, because most of the students, this is what I have experienced, that they don't have a clear concept of the clause. This is the reason that they always confuse a clause with a phrase. So today we have to learn how would we identify a clause and what is that thing which we must keep in our mind when we are identifying a clause there in the exam. We have a sentence over here. Peter ate dinner. while he watched TV. If I write these two sentences separately, one sentence I write, Peter ate dinner, and sentence two I write, he watched TV, and I ask you people to join these two sentences together. So a conjunction will be needed to join these two separate sentences together to make it a complete one sentence. It means that these two mini sentences, one mini sentence, Peter ate dinner, and the other mini sentence, he watched TV, have been hooked together with the help of a conjunction, that is while. So these mini sentences within a sentence, fine? It is a long sentence, and in a long sentence, we have mini sentences. And what is a sentence? How would you say that it is a sentence? Because it does have a subject and a verb. It is a complete sentence giving a complete meaning. So, mini sentences, a sentence within a sentence, is called a clause. This is the main definition of a clause. How would we identify it? That it is a complete sentence within a long sentence. So two clauses are there in this sentence, and these two clauses, they have been joined together with the help of a conjunction, that is while. Then we come to the next concept. There are two kinds of clauses. Now we have to see that how many clauses can be there in a sentence. Independent clause and subordinate clause, and the other name of subordinate clause is dependent clause. So first of all, we have to see what is an independent clause. Independent clause means that it can express a complete idea, a complete thought, and it gives a complete meaning, and it can stand alone. It does not need any other clause just to make its meaning complete. So this is the reason that it is called independent clause. Then we come to subordinate clause, and the other name of subordinate clause is dependent clause. Why do we call it dependent clause? Because it depends on the independent clause to make its meaning complete. It cannot stand by itself as a clause. This is the main idea, that this is called subordinate clause. What makes a clause dependent or subordinate? Now the question is, how would we identify a subordinate clause or a dependent clause whenever you see that a clause is beginning with a subordinating conjunction? So it means that that clause will be called a subordinate clause. As you can see the list over here, who, when, while, which, that, since, because, unless, these are all the subordinating conjunctions. So whenever a clause will be beginning with a subordinating conjunction, it will be called a subordinate clause. Now we come to the examples of a subordinate clause. Because he memorized a poem, Mike will receive extra credit. Or the same sentence we can write in this way: Mike will receive extra credit because he memorized a poem. So in both cases, because the clause which is beginning with a subordinating conjunction is called subordinate clause. So in this sentence, because he memorized a poem is a subordinate clause because it is beginning with a subordinating conjunction, that is because over here. Then we come to the next concept, phrase. So what is a phrase? Phrase means that it is just a group of words, but these group of words, they cannot convey any complete meaning. They don't have a proper subject. They don't have a proper verb. They are not the complete sentence, because we have already discussed that a sentence gives a complete meaning because it does have a subject and verb. On the other hand, phrase is altogether opposite to a sentence. It is a group of words, but it cannot act as a complete sentence because it does not give a complete meaning. Suppose in the example, the gym at the end of the street is just this group of words is written somewhere. So it is not giving any meaning at all. It doesn't make any sense at all. So this is the reason that this is a phrase. Now we have some practice sentences over here. where you can differentiate, where you can separate the clause and phrase from the sentence. I read out the first sentence. She lived in the middle of a great wood. She lived in a clause is a clause. In the middle of a great wood is a phrase. His father wished is a clause. To speak to the teacher is a phrase. The child replied is a clause, but with his perfect voice is a phrase. He expects is a clause, but to get promotion is a phrase. Let us cease work is a clause. From this very moment is a phrase. They live is a clause. On an island is a phrase. So in this way, you can see in all these examples that the subject and verb combination is a clause, but the group of words which cannot stand alone or they do not give any complete meaning, they are the phrases. So in this way, you can differentiate between the clause and the phrase. Then we have some more practice sentences where we can differentiate independent clause and the subordinate clauses. I returned home is an independent clause. Because I was tired is a subordinate clause because it is beginning with a subordinating conjunction. My heart leaps up is an independent clause. When I behold a rainbow is a subordinate clause as it is beginning with a subordinating conjunction when. He says is an independent clause. That he won't go is a subordinate clause. It is beginning with that, a subordinating conjunction. I asked the boy is an independent clause. How old he was is a subordinate clause because it is beginning with a subordinating conjunction, that is how over here. Tell me is an independent clause. Why you did this? Again, it is a subordinate clause. I earn is an independent clause. Whatever I can is a subordinate clause because it is beginning with a subordinating conjunction, whatever. This is the book is an independent clause. Which was lost is a subordinate clause beginning with a subordinating conjunction which. So I hope students that your idea of the differentiation of sentence, phrase and clause would be quite clear by now. Until and unless your concept of the phrase and clause is very much clear, you won't be able to identify the noun phrase, adverb phrase or adjective phrase. Similarly, we are going to have in the later part of the this lecture's noun clause, adjective clause, adverb clause. So if you are able to identify the phrases and clauses, only then you would be able to identify their kinds as well. So this was the whole lecture for today. Keep on revising your things. Allah Hafiz from my side till the next lecture.